The Duke sent his wife to a forgotten estate before London had finished laughing, and within 1 month men who had mocked her were begging to buy the land beneath her feet. Julian Ashcombe, Duke of Marcombe, delivered the order at breakfast in a voice too quiet to give any servant the dignity of pretending not to hear.
Greyhaven will suit you better than London.
Marianne looked from his untouched coffee to the folded papers beside his plate. She had been married to him for 9 days. She had been useful to him for 8. On the 9th, she had become inconvenient.
Is Greyhaven a house or a sentence?
One footman moved by the sideboard and stopped breathing like a man who had discovered that polished silver could become a witness.
It is an estate on the south coast, quiet, remote, and in need of no society.
Then why did your solicitor omit it from the marriage settlement inventory?
His hand tightened on the handle of his cup. The movement was small, but Marianne had learned early that men with titles often revealed themselves in fractions.
Because no one has asked after Greyhaven in 20 years?
I asked yesterday.
The room changed around the words. The fire continued. The clock continued. The footman found a reason to examine the carpet near his shoe.
You embarrassed my solicitor in front of my aunt.
Your solicitor embarrassed himself by losing 3 pages of accounts.
You will leave at noon.
Marianne folded her napkin, placed it beside her plate, and stood before her husband could decide whether dismissal belonged to him.
Then I shall require those 3 pages before noon.
His eyes lifted, and for the first time since their wedding vows, she saw something warmer than courtesy in him. Unfortunately, it was anger.
You will require what I choose to send.
Then choose carefully, Your Grace. I read slowly when men hurry me.
By noon, her carriage waited under the front portico with 2 trunks, one maid who had already decided she preferred unemployment, and a sealed packet from the Marcombe office. Julian did not come out to see her leave. His aunt, Lady Cresswell, watched from an upper window, smiling with the mild satisfaction of a woman who believed a difficult object had been put back in storage. Marianne climbed into the carriage in a dark green traveling dress, her gloves buttoned, her chin level, and the sealed packet resting on her lap like a wager neither side had yet named. The first day took her out of London smoke and into lanes silvered with late summer dust. On the evening of the second day, the road fell between chalk banks and opened suddenly to a gray sweep of water. Greyhaven appeared on the cliff above it, long, low, salt-stained, and more stubborn than grand. Its west wing had boarded windows, its roof wore lichen like an old coat, and a broken lantern tower faced the cove below. A housekeeper met her at the door with keys in one hand and suspicion in the other. The woman gave her name as Mrs. Keene and explained, without apology, that Greyhaven had 4 indoor servants where 20 had once been kept. No proper cook, a leaking library ceiling, and a front staircase that could still be trusted if climbed with Christian moderation.
Has His Grace sent instructions?
Mrs. Keene glanced toward the carriage, as if an instruction might have hidden under the wheel and spared them both the conversation. She said the Duke had sent word that her Grace was to have the blue room, the old morning room, and any part of the house that did not threaten to fall on her.
How generous. We shall begin with the parts still standing.
The housekeeper's mouth twitched, then remembered its discipline. That night, Marianne ate cold ham and bread in a dining room large enough for betrayal. Rain touched the windows. Somewhere in the closed wing, water fell steadily into a basin no one had moved for years. She opened Julian's sealed packet after supper. Inside lay 1 letter in his hand, 2 household ledgers, and the 3 missing pages from the settlement inventory. His letter was brief enough to be unkind without wasting ink. Greyhaven belonged to the Marcombe title, produced nothing of consequence, and would be maintained at the lowest reasonable expense. She might occupy herself with charitable visits if such habits soothed her. Marianne read the ledgers first. The estate had lost money for 16 consecutive years. The rents from the cliff cottages barely covered repairs. The old quarry was exhausted. The fishing leases were written in a hand that looked honest mainly because it was boring. Then she read the missing pages, and the rain outside seemed to pause over the glass. The last page mentioned Thornmere Cove in a single line, buried beneath the language of ancient rights and title boundaries. The cove, the beach, the ruined lantern tower, and all anchorage dues belonged to Greyhaven by grant of 1732. A lesser woman might have missed it. A less insulted woman might have slept. Marian rose, took a candle, and crossed the house in her slippers. The library smelled of damp leather and old salt. Rain had stained one corner of the ceiling. The estate maps lay in a locked cabinet whose key Mrs. Keene had described as lost with the former steward. The lock gave way to a hairpin, patience, and the sort of education governesses never intended to provide. At midnight, Marianne spread 3 old maps across the library table. Thornmere Cove appeared on each of them, not as decoration but as possession. A narrow inlet curved beneath Greyhaven's cliff, sheltered by rock arms from the open sea. A note in the margin, written by a dead Marcombe ancestor with excellent penmanship and very little humility, called it the safest landing between Portsmouth and Dover in foul weather. Marianne slept 2 hours before dawn and woke with ink on her finger. The next morning she walked down to the Cove with Mrs. Keene behind her and a stable boy carrying a lantern no one had needed in daylight. The path was steep, cut into chalk and grass. Below, fishermen worked beside a crooked jetty. Their boats were narrow, tar-dark, and patched with the honest desperation of men who repaired what they could not afford to replace. Conversations stopped as Marianne reached the shingle. One older fisherman, Captain Bell, removed his cap late enough to make the gesture count as argument. He said the Duchess had better keep clear of the lower stones at tide turn unless she wanted Greyhaven to have one less expense by evening.
Is the tide turn dangerous here?
He looked at the broken lantern tower above them and gave an answer that carried 20 years of anger in 10 ordinary words. It was dangerous when rich men forgot poor men's lamps. Marianne turned toward the tower. Its windows were gone, its iron bracket hung loose. At the base, weeds grew around stacked stones from repairs that had begun once and lost the courage to continue.
Who is paid to maintain it?
Captain Bell looked toward Mrs. Keene, who looked toward the cliff, where Greyhaven stood above them like an elderly judge pretending deafness. The old man said the dues had been collected until 6 years earlier by Mr. Calder of the Marcombe office. The repairs had been promised every Michaelmas. The money had traveled inland, the lamp had not. Marianne felt the first clean edge of the situation. Julian had not sent her to emptiness. He had sent her to a place where emptiness had been arranged.
Bring me the last 6 years of receipts.
Captain Bell gave her a look a man gives a lady who has ordered the tide to stand still for tea.
If the receipts exist, I want them. If they do not exist, I want the names of everyone who paid without getting one.
By afternoon, 3 fishermen had appeared at Greyhaven's kitchen door with paper, twine, old grudges, and the cautious pleasure of seeing whether a duchess could be made useful. Mrs. Keene cleared the morning room table. Marianne made columns. Boat names, dues paid, repairs promised, wrecks recorded, lamps missing. Each entry tightened the thread. By evening, she had proof that Thornmere Cove still mattered to men who worked the water. By midnight, she had a different question entirely. If the Cove was worthless, why had Mr. Calder continued collecting informal dues after the official account went silent? 3 days later, Calder arrived from London in a polished carriage with dry boots, a flat smile, and the professional calm of a man who expected women to confuse paper with authority. Marianne received him in the morning room. The windows were open to the sea air. The fishermen's receipts lay sorted before her in 6 neat piles. Calder bowed over her hand without touching it. He said he regretted any discomfort caused by the rustic state of the property. Greyhaven had always been a sentimental burden on the family, and His Grace had hoped the quiet would aid her health.
My health has improved wonderfully since I began reading.
His eyes moved to the receipts, then returned to her face with the smoothness of a door closing. He explained that the Cove rights were obsolete, that anchorage dues no longer justified administrative labor, and that any informal payments had likely been voluntary local arrangements.
Voluntary payments collected in your hand?
Calder's smile remained. He said the Duke trusted him to prevent trivial matters from becoming expensive ones.
Then you must be exhausted.
For the first time, the smile thinned. He placed a document on the table. A consortium of coastal merchants wished to lease Thornmere Cove for storage of coal and timber. The amount offered was insulting if the cove had value, suspicious if it had none, and extremely convenient if someone hoped Marianne would sign before asking the right question.
Why was this not sent to the Duke?
Calder said the Duke had no interest in maritime nuisances. A lease signed by Her Grace as resident representative would spare him delay. Marianne looked at the signature line. Her married name sat there, waiting to become useful in someone else's scheme.
I was sent here because I ask questions. You should have warned them.
She folded the paper once and returned it unsigned. Calder left Greyhaven before luncheon. By the time his carriage reached the hill road, half the fishing village knew the Duchess had refused him, and the other half was improving the story. During the first week, Marianne learned Greyhaven by damage: the roof buckets, the false accounts, the dangerous West Path, and the servants who had stayed out of loyalty rather than wages. She sold 2 cracked silver urns from a locked cabinet and used the money for lamp glass, rope, lime, oil, and a mason with hands scarred by honest work. Mrs. Keene protested only once, mostly because housekeepers are required by ancient law to mourn departing silver even when it has served no purpose except judgment.
If anyone misses them, tell them Greyhaven exchanged vanity for light.
On the 7th evening, the old lantern tower burned for the first time in years. Its light was modest, wavering in the wind, but the boats below answered with raised hands. Marianne stood beside the tower door with her hair loosened by the gusts and her cloak snapping behind her. Captain Bell climbed the path to say the lamp could be seen 3 miles out, perhaps 4 in clear weather, and that her father must have taught her figures.
My mother did. My father believed arithmetic made women disagreeable.
Captain Bell considered this and said her mother had done England a service. Marianne laughed before she could stop herself. It was the first sound Greyhaven had taken from her rather than required of her. If you are listening while the house is quiet, or while rain, wind, or some ordinary room sound is around you, leave a like or any small sign of life on this story. It helps YouTube understand that this kind of long, patient romance still has people waiting for it. At the end of the 2nd week, Julian came. He arrived without announcement, riding ahead of his carriage, his coat dark with travel dust and his expression sharpened by letters he had clearly received too late to prevent his own curiosity. Marianne saw him from the tower path. Below her, the cove shone under afternoon light, boats rocking inside its shelter, while open water struck white against the outer rocks. Julian looked up. For a moment, husband and wife regarded one another across height, salt, and all the words they had chosen poorly. He dismounted before she reached the drive.
You refused, Calder.
I did several things before breakfast. You may need to be more specific.
You refused to sign a lease he recommended.
A lease worth less than 1 season of anchorage dues if the tower is repaired properly.
Julian's gaze moved over the house. The open windows, the new rope stacked near the stable wall, the servants carrying clean linen through a door that had been sealed when she arrived.
I sent you here to rest.
You sent me here because I found missing pages.
The sentence landed cleanly. He deserved it, which made it harder for him to answer.
Greyhaven has never repaid attention.
Perhaps it disliked the quality of attention offered.
His mouth changed, almost becoming a smile before pride remembered its post.
You have made allies quickly.
People become friendly when a roof stops leaking and a lamp saves their boats.
Julian looked toward the lantern tower. The late sun caught the new glass and flashed once across his face.
That tower was beyond repair.
No. It was beyond excuse.
He flinched, not dramatically, not enough for servants to gossip with confidence, but enough for Marianne to know he had heard her. Dinner that night was served in the small dining room because the large one still smelled of damp plaster and ancient superiority. Julian sat opposite her beneath a portrait of an ancestor whose expression suggested he had disapproved of women long before meeting any. The conversation began with accounts, as all dangerous marriages sometimes do.
Calder has managed Marcombe legal affairs for 12 years.
Then he has had 12 years to become comfortable.
Comfortable men do not always become thieves.
Careless men often hire them.
A fork touched porcelain too sharply. Julian looked at her across the candles, and for once there were no footmen close enough to rescue them with soup.
You think me careless?
I think you are precise where society can see you and negligent where people cannot embarrass you.
He sat back slowly. Outside, wind moved along the eaves. The house seemed to listen with all its cracks.
My father died with 4 estates mortgaged, 3 cousins demanding portions, and 1 aunt certain that dignity could pay interest. I became careful because the alternative was ruin.
Careful with London. Careful with creditors, careful with appearances. Greyhaven proves you were not careful with people.
He looked down at his hand. There was a small scar across one knuckle, pale against the skin, the kind earned in youth and kept by memory.
I came here as a boy. My mother hated the place. My father called it a leak in the family purse.
And you believed him.
I was 11.
The answer was too plain to fight. Marianne felt the anger in her shift, not soften exactly, but find a room inside itself for pity.
Then you are old enough now to read the maps yourself.
The next morning, she took him to the library. He stood beside her while she laid out the grant of 1732, the boundary map, the fisherman's receipts, and Calder's proposed lease. Julian read silently. He read faster than she expected and frowned sooner than she wanted.
This lease would give them exclusive use of the lower beach.
And the right to block village boats during storage loading.
Calder would know that.
Calder wrote it.
Julian turned the page and went still at a clause near the bottom.
Renewal for 99 years.
At a rent low enough to be mistaken for charity if one were very tired.
He looked at her then, and anger had changed direction.
Why would he risk it?
Because you trusted him. Because I was meant to be too humiliated to read. Because everyone here had been taught that Greyhaven was already dead.
Julian folded the lease with care. Men of his rank often broke things privately when shame arrived. Julian did something more alarming. He became very calm.
I will take this to London.
No.
His eyes lifted with the first clean sign that she had surprised him.
You will send for Calder, and you will demand papers. He will apologize, replace one document with another, and tell you the matter is contained. Then he will sell the same rights through a cousin by Christmas.
You have a better proposal.
I have a public one.
She explained the harbor board petition. Thornmere Cove could be recognized as an emergency anchorage if the old rights were confirmed, and the tower certified merchants, fishermen, and perhaps even the Admiralty would pay proper fees for use without excluding the village. Greyhaven could become necessary without becoming a coal yard. Julian listened without interruption. That alone made the room feel altered.
A public hearing invites scrutiny.
Good.
It invites gossip.
We are married. Gossip came with the silver.
He looked toward the window, where the cove lay bright under a restless sky.
You understand they will say you forced my hand?
They already say I was sent away because I could not keep mine folded.
He almost smiled again. This time he allowed it to exist for a breath.
Did you ever intend to be a quiet duchess?
I intended to be an honest one. Quiet was negotiable.
For 3 days, Julian remained at Greyhaven. He inspected accounts, rode to the village, spoke with Captain Bell, and discovered that poor men remembered unpaid promises with a precision superior to any ledger. Marianne watched him listen, and the shape of him became more difficult to hate. He was proud,
Marianne.
yes.
Careful, Marianne.
He had used coldness as a
Julian,
door
thank
and
you.
rank as a lock. Yet he also noticed when a tenant's boy limped, when a rope was fraying, when Mrs. Keene concealed fatigue behind discipline. On the 4th morning of his visit, rain drove them both into the lantern tower while the masons secured an iron bracket above. The stair was narrow. Marianne's wet sleeve brushed Julian's coat. He reached past her to steady a swinging shutter, and the movement brought him close enough for her to feel the warmth of him through damp wool.
The hinge is split.
I noticed.
Of course you did.
The words held no mockery this time. That made them more dangerous. A gust struck the tower. The shutter slammed inward. Marianne lost her footing on the wet stone, and Julian caught her by both arms before she hit the wall. They stood that way too long for accident, and not long enough for honesty.
You may release me, Your Grace.
I know.
He did. He simply did not at once. Outside, the sea lifted and struck the rocks below. Inside, all the ruined years of Greyhaven seemed to narrow into the space between his hands and her sleeves.
I was wrong to send you here as punishment.
Yes.
He gave a short breath, almost a laugh, because forgiveness had apparently been refused entry without credentials.
I was also wrong about the estate.
That answer may yet become useful.
He released her carefully. Marianne stepped back, and the tower felt colder at once. By the end of the third week at Greyhaven, the petition was ready. It carried signatures from fishermen, merchants in 2 nearby towns, a retired naval lieutenant who had once taken shelter in Thornmere Cove during a winter gale, and Julian Ashcombe, Duke of Marcombe. Marianne looked at his signature longer than she intended.
Is my handwriting unsatisfactory?
It is surprisingly obedient.
Enjoy the novelty.
She did. She also noticed that he had signed beneath her name rather than above it. Calder answered the petition by arriving with Lady Cresswell and a letter already sent to the harbor board. In it, he described Greyhaven's resident Duchess as nervous, overexcited, and acting without the Duke's approval. Marianne produced a copy before tea had cooled. Captain Bell's nephew worked as a clerk for a magistrate, and clerks, like tides, had routes of their own.
Did you call my wife unstable in an official letter?
Calder said he had sought to protect the Marcombe name from ridicule. Lady Cresswell added that misplaced intelligence in young wives could become feverish.
I have been called many things since my marriage. Feverish is the first that sounds almost energetic.
Julian's face lost every trace of amusement.
Calder, every correspondence concerning Thornmere Cove will be on this table before supper.
By evening, the papers revealed the harder truth. The consortium that wanted Thornmere Cove had already paid Calder through an intermediary, and the amount was large enough to buy silence from a weak man while still proving theft by a stupid one. Julian read the receipt twice in the library, while Rain tapped at the glass.
I signed his authority after my father's funeral.
You were grieving.
I was relieved someone else could think.
Marianne stood across from him with a lamp between them. The anger she had brought into the room changed again, this time into something heavier.
That is how men like Calder survive. They learn the hour when grief makes signatures easy.
Julian closed his hand over the receipt.
I made him powerful.
Then help me make the truth louder than he is.
The hearing was set for the first Monday of the following month. Between the notice and the date stood 10 days, 1 hostile aunt, 1 cornered solicitor, 3 visiting merchants who suddenly claimed deep affection for local commerce, and a coast that had never cared for human schedules. On the 5th night before the hearing, the storm came. It began at dusk with a wind that took the breath out of open doors. By 8, rain struck Greyhaven sideways. By 9, the sea had become a moving darkness below the cliff, white only where it shattered itself against rock. Marianne was in the tower accounts with Julian when the bell from the village began to ring. Mrs. Keene came to the library door, pale beneath her cap. A trading sloop had lost direction beyond the outer rocks. The new lamp was burning, but the lower beacon near the jetty had failed. Julian was already reaching for his coat.
The lower beacon oil is in the tower store.
Stay here.
I know the path.
Marianne, the cliff steps will be running with water.
Then walk quickly behind me.
There are marriages that become real in churches, some over sickbeds, some in nurseries, and some while 2 people run into rain carrying lamp oil because pride has finally found a task beneath it. Julian took the heavier can. Marianne took the lantern and rope. They crossed the yard with the wind shoving them sideways, Mrs. Keene behind them shouting that both of them had lost their wits in a manner unhelpful to staff morale. The cliff path was worse than Julian had feared. Water streamed over chalk. Grass tore underfoot. Below, men moved along the jetty with lamps, small lights against a very large dark. Halfway down, Marianne slipped. Julian caught the rope at her waist and braced himself against the bank.
Stop arguing with gravity.
Tell it to be reasonable.
He laughed then, sharply, unbelievably, in the rain. The sound vanished into the storm, but Marianne heard it. They reached the lower beacon with Captain Bell and 2 younger men. The sloop's lantern swung beyond the rocks too far east. Without a mark from shore, she would turn toward the wrong gap and split herself open before midnight. The beacon frame was jammed with rust. Julian tried the latch. It held. Captain Bell swore in a way that made class distinctions briefly irrelevant. Marianne looked at the structure, the bracket, the rope line, and the wet stones under her boots.
The lens does not need the frame, it needs height.
The tower light is already above.
Too far back, the lower lens marks the turn.
She pointed to the old net-drying mast beside the jetty.
Lash it there.
No one moved for 1 second. Then Julian seized the lens housing. Captain Bell cut rope, and the younger men dragged the mast upright against the wind. Marianne held the lantern under her cloak, while Julian climbed 3 rungs of the mast with the oil can hooked over his arm. Rain ran down his face. His boots slipped twice. Captain Bell and the others held the mast by ropes as if holding a man in place by force of will. The sloop's bell rang from the dark.
Julian.
He looked down through the rain, waiting for her instruction.
Left bracket first. The wind is taking the housing.
He obeyed. No argument, no title, no lecture about danger. He obeyed, and the lens caught. When the flame rose behind it, the lower beacon threw a hard amber blade across the rain. Far out, the sloop's lantern wavered, steadied, and began to turn. Men shouted from the jetty. The sound came thin through the weather, then stronger as the sloop passed the outer teeth of rock and entered Thornmere Cove alive. Julian climbed down, soaked, bleeding from one palm, and breathing hard. Marianne reached for his hand before remembering to be angry with him.
You were right about the lens.
I will try not to make a habit of it.
I may have to make a habit of surviving it.
Captain Bell chose that moment to announce that if the Duke and Duchess intended to flirt in a gale, they might kindly do it after the mooring ropes were secured. By midnight, the sloop was safe. 2 sailors were warming in Greyhaven's kitchen, and the story of the Duchess's lower beacon had already begun walking inland without its coat. On the morning after the storm, the first journalist arrived. He was young, damp, and ambitious enough to pretend he had come for accurate facts. Lady Cresswell attempted to turn him away. Captain Bell gave him breakfast. By noon, 3 versions of the rescue were being prepared for print, only one of which gave the weather sufficient credit. Calder understood the danger before anyone else. A private fraud could be folded away by men of standing. A public rescue made Thornmere Cove visible. Once visible, the land could no longer be sold as worthless. 2 days before the hearing, Calder made his last move. He came to Marianne in the old chapel corridor, choosing the hour when servants were far enough away for threats to sound like conversation. He carried a copy of Julian's original breakfast letter, the one that had sent her to Greyhaven as punishment. He said society would enjoy reading how little the Duke trusted his wife, especially if the hearing turned into a marital spectacle. Marianne looked at the letter and felt the old breakfast room rise around her. The silver, the footman, Julian's calm cruelty, her own pulse held behind her teeth.
Are you threatening my reputation or his?
Calder said the world rarely bothered to separate a woman's reputation from her husband's displeasure.
You have mistaken this century for a fortress.
His face changed. Polite men are often most honest when politeness stops rewarding them. He said she had no idea how quickly admiration became ridicule. A young wife sent away after 9 days, playing harbor mistress with fishermen, dragging her husband's name through a provincial board. London would not call it courage. London would call it hunger. Marianne felt the strike. Courage that feels nothing is usually performance. Real courage has nerves inside it. Julian's voice came from the end of the corridor.
London may call it what it likes.
Calder turned. Julian stood with Mrs. Keene behind him, her arms full of linen and her expression full of satisfaction at being useful in the most improper way.
I will call it my wife's work.
The words did not repair everything. Words almost never do, yet they placed a stone where none had been before, and Marianne felt the ground alter beneath her. Calder recovered quickly. He said the Duke was emotional after the storm and would regret public generosity when the laughter began.
I have regretted private cowardice more.
Julian took the breakfast letter from Calder's hand.
If this appears anywhere, I will publish the rest of the correspondence beside it.
Calder understood. Fraud rarely fears morality. It fears context. The first Monday of the following month arrived clear, with sunlight bright enough to make every lie look slightly underdressed. The harbor board met above the customs office in Fairford, where merchants filled the benches and fishermen stood along the wall in their best coats. Marianne entered beside Julian, not behind him, with the old map of Thornmere Cove under her arm. When the chairman asked whether she understood the burden of maintaining an emergency anchorage, her answer traveled through the room without ornament.
I understand obligations better than neglect.
She laid out the grant of 1732, the receipts, the storm record, the repair accounts, and testimony from the saved sloop. Calder answered with polished warnings about obsolete rights and coastal chaos, the sort of language that often convinces officials because it sounds expensive to question. Julian rose before the chairman could retreat into caution. Marianne had expected him to defend ownership. She had expected rank, perhaps apology shaped like authority. Instead, he placed Calder's proposed lease on the table.
Before this board weighs uncertainty, it should see who profited from calling the Cove worthless.
Calder's practiced stillness became the first honest thing about him.
This lease would have transferred effective control of Thornmere Cove for 99 years at a rent beneath its working value. The solicitor who advised it had already accepted private consideration from parties connected to the proposed lessees.
The room broke into sound. Calder demanded that the Duke withdraw the slander.
I will withdraw any phrase the documents fail to support.
He placed the receipt beside the lease.
Unfortunately for you, Mr. Calder, paper has better nerves than men.
Marianne looked at him then. The pride was still there. Of course it was. Love does not turn a man into someone convenient, yet his pride had moved from shielding himself to standing where truth required weight. Captain Bell spoke next, cap crushed in both hands, explaining the old lamp, the unpaid dues, and the boats that had stopped sheltering at Thornmere because no one trusted the rocks after dark. His voice shook once during the storm account, then steadied when he pointed at Marianne. He said Her Grace had done in 3 weeks what 3 stewards had promised across 20 years. She had put light where men had left paper, and even the men who disliked the sentence heard it. By late afternoon, the board confirmed Greyhaven's ancient rights, recognized Thornmere Cove as an emergency anchorage, ordered public notice of its availability, and required a maintenance schedule funded by proper dues. 3 merchants approached Julian before he had crossed the room. One wanted storage rights, another wanted shipping access. A third, who had laughed at Marianne in London after the breakfast story spread, bowed so deeply to her that his spine nearly discovered faith. He said the land was suddenly of great interest.
Land rarely changes overnight. People merely notice late.
Julian heard her and did not hide his smile. Outside the customs office, Fairford smelled of tar, horse sweat, and sea wind. The fishermen gathered around Captain Bell. Lady Cresswell entered her carriage with the rigid dignity of a woman who intended to describe defeat as fatigue. Calder left under escort to answer questions that had acquired official stationery. Marianne stood on the steps with the leather map case against her side. For the first time since London, she felt tired enough to admit she was tired.
I owe you an apology too large for these steps.
Then begin with a smaller one and continue later.
He accepted the rebuke without defense.
I sent you to Greyhaven because I wanted silence. I found it easier to call you difficult than to admit you had seen what I missed.
Now.
You also called the estate worthless.
No, I will not.
I did.
You were wrong twice before noon. That is efficient.
His laugh came quietly, and this time it did not vanish into rain.
Come back to Markham House with me.
Marianne looked toward the road west, where beyond 12 miles of hedges and chalk and weather, Greyhaven stood above the cove with its repaired light.
No.
He absorbed the answer. Pain crossed his face before pride could arrange it.
I will return to London when I choose. Greyhaven needs contracts drafted, lamps maintained, and men taught that asking my husband first will delay them.
Julian looked down at the step between them.
Then may I come to Greyhaven?
Marianne studied him. The question mattered because it was a question.
As Duke?
As your husband, if I can learn the office.
She did not answer quickly. Quick forgiveness can become another form of obedience when the wound was public and the apology private. Julian seemed to understand that. He took the breakfast letter from his coat and held it out.
This belongs to you, if you want the proof of what I was.
Marianne looked at the letter. The paper had begun the exile. It had also become Calder's weapon. She took it, unfolded it once, and saw the severe lines of Julian's hand. Then she tore it in half. The sound was small against the street, but Julian heard it as if the whole county had gone quiet.
I do not need proof of what you were. I need evidence of what you intend to become.
Then I will provide it.
He did not reach for her, and Marianne respected the restraint enough to reach for him instead. Her gloved hand rested on his sleeve for only a moment. It was not forgiveness complete, or romance solved, or any of the tidy arrangements people prefer when pain has made them uncomfortable. It was an opening, and serious people know openings require maintenance.
He's retreating.
3 days later, Julian arrived at Greyhaven without entourage, without Lady Cresswell, and without the carriage that announced rank before character had time to speak. He brought 2 architects, 1 honest solicitor, and a box of account books he had carried himself from the Marcombe office.
I dismissed Calder.
Necessary and overdue.
I reported him.
Better and harder.
I told my aunt she may visit when she can speak of you with respect.
Marianne looked up from the ledgers with interest she refused to disguise.
Then we must pray she enjoys her own company.
He smiled with the tired relief of a man who had been waiting for permission to laugh in his own life. During the following week, Greyhaven changed in visible ways. Men measured the jetty, stonecutters marked the lower wall, and Julian redirected every merchant who addressed him first until even the slow ones learned where authority now sat. Their marriage changed more slowly and more honestly. He knocked before entering rooms, asked before reading papers, and learned the small habits that no settlement inventory records. She learned his shame had numbers attached to it, and that a man could carry debt long after the money was gone. On the evening a little over 5 weeks after Marianne had arrived at Greyhaven, the first official anchorage fee was paid. Captain Bell brought it himself in a tin box, with 2 signatures, 1 seal, and a grin he attempted to bury beneath solemn procedure. Marianne entered the sum in the ledger. Julian sanded the ink. Mrs. Keene stood in the doorway and pretended she had come to ask about dinner. Outside, the tower lamp burned cleanly. A merchant vessel rested in the cove, her mast black against a copper sunset. For once, Greyhaven looked less forgotten than patient.
The land is worth more than Marcombe House now.
No, the land was always worth what it was. Your house merely stopped ignoring it.
He came to stand beside her at the window.
I have been thinking about partnership.
A dangerous habit. It leads to shared desks.
Shared authority.
Shared blame.
Shared credit.
She looked at him then. The room had grown dim behind them. The last light touched the side of his face, finding the man beneath the title and making no promise to keep him easy.
I cannot undo the breakfast.
No.
I cannot undo the carriage.
No.
But I can stop asking you to live where my pride placed you.
Marianne turned fully toward him.
What are you asking?
Stay at Greyhaven because you choose it. Let me stay because you choose me.
The sea moved below the windows. Somewhere down the path, a fisherman called to another, and the sound came up softened by distance. Marianne had imagined satisfaction many times during those first furious days. She had imagined Julian humbled, Calder exposed, Lady Cresswell silent, and London forced to swallow its laughter. All of those things had happened in some measure. Yet satisfaction by itself was a colder room than she expected. What warmed it was the sight of a proud man learning to stand beside her without calling it surrender.
I choose Greyhaven.
Julian nodded once, accepting both the gift and the condition hidden inside it.
And I will see what you make possible after that.
He smiled then, but did not rush her. She rewarded him for the restraint by stepping closer. Their first kiss at Greyhaven was not dramatic enough for the gossip columns. No one fainted, no chandelier witnessed it. The sea did not pause, and the repaired lamp did not blaze brighter in moral approval. It was simply honest. His hand came to her waist as if asking a question. Her fingers touched his lapel as if answering one. The kiss held apology, anger, relief, and the cautious beginning of desire, which is often how real tenderness enters after damage. When they parted, Julian rested his forehead near hers, close enough for the words to belong only to them.
Undeniable.
Thank you for making my punishment into a kingdom.
It was never your punishment.
She looked past him to the cove, the tower, the boats, the house waking room by room.
It was my land once I learned where to stand.
In London, men said Greyhaven had become the most wanted land in England because a hidden cove had been rediscovered and a solicitor had been exposed. Those reasons were accurate enough, except they left out the heart. Greyhaven became wanted because Marianne treated forgotten things as unfinished. A lamp, a ledger, a village, a marriage, and a woman sent away to become small. I once knew a woman named Beatrice. Yes, Beatrice Hanwell, who kept a shop ledger after her husband died, because every neighbor told her the business was already lost. She found the error they had all missed, and after that they called her fortunate, which is a common word people use when they would rather not say competent. If you have ever been sent somewhere small and discovered there was still room to become yourself, tell me in the comments. I read those stories differently now.